get right into my favorite 2-light setup. I call this my signature setup, and I'm going to walk you through how it came about and why it ties perfectly into that environmental wraparound light. I've still got the environmental setup right now where I have we've got our lovely model Christina in here as well, where I have the light bouncing into that corner in the background. I'll show you what that looks like. It's going to be very, very bright. There we go. And wrapping around in our whole space. The reason I'm showing that is because I want you to get the idea of us using this as our base layer of light. So this is our soft cover of light. As I showed you at the end of the setup where we're shooting in using the environment as our modifier, I could use this as the base layer, really soft, beautiful spread of light that's filling in all my shadows, and then add another light for directionality. So taking that to its logical next step, let's say, because this happened to me, I got hired for a big company whose name I won't mention, who has very colorful branding. And they asked me to photograph a celebrity in one of their conference rooms. I've done lots of conference shoots, bouncing into the walls, fantastic. So I walk in, the walls are purple. You can't bounce into purple walls because you're going to get purple light on your subjects. Or you did paint your studio a dark color and you can't use your bounce surfaces. So I switched to a 2-light setup that takes the same principle of we're going to bring in a beautiful wash of soft light and then add directionality. Again, it's actually incredibly simple. So instead of using my light back here, I'm going to show you. I'll bring it out. And to make it really clear that we're going to use it, I'm going to unplug it. Unless the laws of physics have changed in the last 5 minutes, it will not fire whatsoever. So this is just not doing anything right now. We're going to forget all about this environmental lighting, wraparound light, and we're going to move into using only modifiers to light this scene and get soft yet directional light. I have the model in a black ruffled dress because one of the things that you don't get when you don't have control of your shadows in the studio is you lose the shadow definition. In any sort of darker fabric, you lose shadows usually kind of if the hair is down in that neck area here where you have that really dark sort of cave, I would say, like right in the corner here. You'll be familiar with that. And that studio look, we're not going to have that. So what I'm going to do, the way I build this is I'm going to find my biggest modifier that I have in the studio. In this case, I have an Elinchrom light motif. It's 6 foot or 190 centimeters. And I've got it on this lovely rolling stand so that I can just bring it in. You don't have to have a rolling stand, but it does make things simpler as long as you use a sandbag with it so that it's safe and secure. And I've got my ELB 500 battery pack, which is my favorite light. The battery and all the electronics are down here. In this unit, we hang it on the stand. You don't have to do this. You can also have it on the floor. And I've got it connected to a head inside of this giant modifier, which I don't know if you can see that in the camera. Let me bring it down for you. It's not that heavy, actually. Perfect. Giant, big modifier. If you don't have this, don't worry. You can do this with whatever the biggest light is that you have. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pretend that this is just like my base layer. I'm going to bring it in a little bit to camera right behind me, and I'll raise it up to where it was because I want this to be not lighting her under the chin again, and it's pointed almost directly at her. Very unusual for me. There we go. So it's going to be behind camera here. It doesn't have to be very scientific setup. And this is now the only light I've got turned on. I'm just going to put it at where the middle power of the pack is. So I know it goes to a certain amount. I'm going to just set it and see what that looks like. Lovely. Again, I've got my camera at 1/200th of a second shutter speed. I'm at ISO 200 and I'm at 5.6 aperture. So you can see this is a little bit underexposed. Let me also do my ambient light test before we get into that. I'm going to take the trigger off, take a picture without any of the lights flashing. Again, I'm just making sure I have control of my light. So the only thing that's firing right now is this guy, and I know I don't have quite enough light coming out of it. So I'm just going to turn it up. There we go. That starts to be doable. Let me turn it up one more stop. I'm just going to do it like that, go from 5 to 6. The numbers don't matter, but most units, when you go up from either 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 or even 2.2 to 3.2, if you go up by 1, you double the amount of light. It's a modern convenience that we didn't used to have. There used to be very complicated dials because when you go up a stop, you're doubling the amount of energy you put out. So if you went from 5 to 6, it's not actually going from 5 to 6, it's going from whatever 5 is. Let's say that's 5 units of energy to 6, you're actually going to 10 units of energy and so forth. So units of energy, that's very scientific. Perfect, good. So all I'm looking for here is I want my shadows to be perfectly filled in. Christina, you don't have to do anything yet. You can just chill as you are. If you want to do a little glam pose, you can. You know, sometimes I like this idea of, Christina's a model, so this is not as applicable. But when I'm like doing a light test, I'll say to my subject, oh, I'm just doing a light test. And when you do that, sometimes they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then they just relax and you're like, that's the pose. So then you quickly shoot and catch them off guard, which Christina, she's a pro. She doesn't need that. There we go. Lovely. So I'm just looking for my shadows to be filled in. So if I go over here to my Capture app, I'll show you what happens in the shadows. I'm going to zoom in on the dress here. Or like, let's say here we have a lovely dark shoe. There we go. And you see, because this is behind camera, it's filling in every shadow that we could possibly have on this frame when I bring up the shadows. So I'm going to reset my frame back to where we were. I don't need this to be full, perfect exposure because I'm going to just fill in my shadows. That's all it's for. If I brought it to the perfect exposure, let's see. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to even need to try because I just want those shadows. So as long as you have them in your Capture app and they're not clipped, which means you don't have the definition in there, you need to bring your light a little bit more powerful. So if I don't have enough power in my light, what could I do? I could remove the front diffuser of this, and because I know this is a one-stop thickness, I'll double the amount of light that actually reaches the model, but I don't need to in this case, and I'll show you why. Next, so I've got my base layer. It's not quite as soft and crunchy as bouncing the light and wrapping it around in the environment, but that's just the way it is. When you're using studio lights, it's going to feel a little bit more commercial. There is nothing that beats the softness of the wraparound and using your environment as a modifier light. Nothing. Not even this, although I love it, because magic happens when we bring in the second light. Let's do that. We've got the same ELB 500, my battery pack by Elinchrom, which I love. It's on a hook, and we're going to stick it over on this side as if by magic. Thank you, Magnus. And again, the sandbag goes on that C-stand. Fantastic. I'll turn this on. Lovely. And I'll just set it, again, whatever, somewhere in the middle of the pack. I know at 0.1 it's going to be so low. That's just from a little bit of experience. Whatever you have, start somewhere. If it's too dark, I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to turn off the light behind me. If I'm using multiple lights, every time we shoot, every single time, as I'm building multiple lights, and I don't do, I do some setups where we need a lot of lights, I always build one light at a time and I test it. Why not? We have the luxury of digital photography, taking another frame costs you nothing. So as I did in the one light video, I'm going to bring this up to where the bottom of this is at eye height. With models, you can do it a little bit higher. It gives you kind of a fashion angle. And I'm going to find the exposure for this that works. So for the sake of this test, I will first pretend that we don't have. In actual fact, let's make this easier for ourselves. Just for the demonstration, because we've still got our little box that we built as if we were in a small space from when we were shooting our wraparound light. So for the sake of demonstrating this, let's take all of that down. I'll get rid of the ceiling. I'll get rid of the V-flat on the right. I'll get rid of the V-flat, the black V-flat here on this side. So let's do that real quick. You get to see how the sausage is made. Nothing wrong with that. Here, Magnus, you can hand it to me. Yeah. Wonderful. Wow, by magic. This is just to kind of stimulate a small space like I showed you in the environment video. Let's get rid of all of that. I'm also going to get rid of this, as if we have nothing bouncing light back and forth at all. Let's get rid of this one, and we can also walk this light out just so we doesn't get confusing. We're not using that one anymore. We're just using the two lights in this modifier and in this modifier right now. Okay, lovely. I might need to give you some help here, Magnus. I'll pull it out if you hold the stand. There we go. Well, lovely. Let's start with a clean slate here. There we go. Thank you so much. Good. Lovely. I've already tested the light in the background, but just to be sure, the one behind me, let's just make sure we're still in a good place. I don't think it'll change too much based on the box that we built. Let's see where we're at. Is that still pointing at you? Lovely. Nice. Very similar idea. Good. I'm going to turn this one off. And I'm just going to bring this one in as I showed you in the one light video. Good. And again, I'm going to put it somewhere in the mid-range. Let's just put it at eye height about here without bounce to start, because for the signature light setup, you don't need the bounce. I'll show you why. Good. Let's take a test shot there. Lovely. So if you imagine, we're going to combine. I actually kind of like the exposure on this. Just give me one with eye contact right at the camera, Christina. Yes, I like that pose actually. Good. Really glam. So if we think about these two images here, one is with the front of Christina, all the shadows, everything filled in, and one is really sidey. So if you remember, I wanted soft and directional light. So when we combine these two together, let's try that. This one's on. I'm going to turn on this backlight as well. And I've got it at the same powers where we were. Now, if you notice, both of them, the ones that are on the screen right now, are a little underexposed. What happens when I add the two lights together? It'll come out looking almost exactly where it should be in terms of the exposure. So to show you why that is, I'm going to do another little mad scientist water demo, which I'm going to do right now. I want to show you what happens when we combine two light sources together. We're going to use water to demonstrate this. And let's imagine you have one light and you take the time to find your perfect exposure. Perfect exposure, in this case, represented by a full glass of water. When you hit the flash, you get your perfect exposure on your subject, let's say with your base layer. Well, here's what happens if we were to combine. So then we have that one light, perfect exposure, and we're going to add our second light. So you have your base layer at perfect exposure, and then you're going to add your kicker light as the second light, and you'll also set that at perfect exposure. So what happens when we then combine both lights together when we take the picture? Well, our exposure is going to be way too much. So what must we do? Well, you can set them both at the perfect exposure, but when you combine them both, you really essentially need to be just combining 2 half glasses of water, represented here by half glasses from our perfect little spigot setup. I'm going to toss this dramatically to the ground. There we go. And when you combine the 2 half glasses, you get the perfect exposure for when the flash goes off. So it's a little a concept that you kind of have to understand. If you meter each of your individual lights to the perfect exposure in camera, when you combine them together, you're really going to have too much light. So you need to bring them both down. And that's why in the rest of this video, I'm going to show you both the base layer and our kicker light a little bit underexposed. And I'll walk you through that again about how when we combine them, it's 2 half glasses of water combined together. If you were using 3, then you'd need 3 third full water cups. Could insert a joke about optimism here, but I shan't. And it's just a demonstration kind of that concept. Of course, if you are backlighting and lighting from the front, then those 2 lights don't necessarily intersect. It's going to be a little bit different. But once you wrap your head around this concept, it opens up understanding how to layer lights together in the studio. So there's another thing I want to do, which is let's really take this idea of dialing in. There's something else that happens here, which is that you can use either one of these lights to create either more softness, fill in those shadows more if you turn that up or down, or you could fill in your shadows less or more by turning that up and down, or you could make it more directional by turning that one up and down. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to ask Magnus to come in and help me with that. And what we're going to do is, oh wow, this is nice, this extension. If you can see that on the screen here, hold that right here. Perfect. And currently it's at 3.0. So this particular pack goes from 0.1 all the way to 6.3. These numbers are meaningless. It doesn't matter. The only thing you need to know is when you go from, let's say you go from 5.0 to 4.0 to 3.0, each one of those doubles or halves the amount of power that this thing puts out. They make it easy for you now, and nowadays with modern technology, you can go up by 1/10 of a stop at a time. So you'd have to click this 10 times, and every time I click the button on my remote up there, it goes up or down by 1/10 at a time. So we're going to start, let's start at like 1.0. And I'm going to see both lights are firing. I'm going to see as we dial in, Magnus is going to go up by 2/10 of a stop every single frame. And I want you to see the difference as we literally dial in our directionality. At some point it'll get too bright, at some point it'll be perfect, but it's like a slider you can just have. And whatever direction you choose, if you want it to be more toppy, if you want it to be more sidey, it's the same principle applies. You're adding those 2 lights together, those 2 cups of water. Okay, Christina, you're going to keep your face pointed exactly at me. Beautiful. And I'm going to take a shot. Good. Magnus is going to go up by 2/10. Perfect. And again. And again. The light behind me isn't firing. One more time. Do that one more time. Go back to 1.6. Good. 1.8. Good. And you start to see it slowly on the screen. 2.0, 2.2. Slowly, you can really start to see that direction taking shape. 2.6. And I'm looking for, on the screen here, 2.8, 3.0. So we've gone up 2 stops. So we've taken whatever light we had when we were at, did we start at 2.0? 1.0. 1.0, we got to 3.0. We've doubled it, and we've doubled it again. So now we're at 3.2. Again, these numbers are meaningless. I'm just showing you that we're gradually going up. Whatever light you have, you can literally just do this experiment. You'd gradually go up. And look also how beautiful that shadow is behind her. It really looks very soft and natural. Lovely, Lovely. And I almost feel like this is like a commercial photography slider. So we're now at 4.6. We're going to go all the way to 6.2. And you can see it starts to get a little bit overexposed. That's all right. And we're just playing with how much light is coming from here versus how much light is coming from here. So as we get into these higher numbers, obviously it gets overexposed. So I'll just fulfill my promise and go to 6.2, even though it's getting to be really quite garish. Good. So I think we were about perfect at about 4 point something. Let's try that, 4.2. And I do this every time. Perfect. Good. Christina, eyes open. Lovely. Beautiful. Let me just take that same shot. We found the number doesn't matter. If you have your light, you slowly bring it up, you try it out, you see until it feels really flattering for your client. It's going to be different for every type of client that you have. So I test this every single time. We want to know, good, how can we play around with the balance of these two lights to get it looking really directional or not? So I'm going to show you just how that looks by turning this one off. I'm going to turn it off completely so it's only that one is firing. Only our kicker light up there. This I call the base, that I call the kicker. So on the screen here you can see the shadow is really hard. We actually have, because if I go stand here where the light is not shining on the background, right here I can see, okay, the modifier starts lighting about here. We're going to have a shadow because not lighting here. As soon as I add my base layer, all of those problems actually kind of disappear and it becomes really natural. That's actually not so bad, but I would wager that it's much more beautiful when we add our base layer in addition. So what we're going to do now is let's do the same exercise with the light in the back here. And we've put an extension cord on this light here so that you can see. Magnus, you're going to stand here for the cameras. I'll turn this light back on. So this is now that big light that's behind the camera. And I've got this upside down. Look at that. And we're going to do the same thing. Where did we start? 1.0? 1.0. I'm going to do that. We'll start at 1.0 in our base layer. And I call this like the wrinkle slider. You know, I might need a little bit more light from the base layer than Christina needs. But these are both now firing, and we're going to do that same experiment, bringing the power of this light slowly up. The power of the light. Okay, perfect. That's doing almost nothing. So as you watch these images on the screen, have a look at the shadow here on the right, and also look at the shadow behind her. She's standing quite close to the backdrop, and it looks very nice. Good. We're going to 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2.0, 2.2. Magnus and I have done this together a bunch of times. 2.4, 2.6, and we start to see that lift of the shadows slowly coming in. And this is where you get that refinement. Those little adjustments really make a big difference. Good, keep going, keep going. We're at 4.0 now, 4.2. As I go up in the power, I can't shoot as fast because this won't have time to refresh. So I've missed a bunch of frames there. So I'm going to just take a little moment, wait for this pack to refresh. Perfect, 4.8, 5.0, 5.2, 5.4. Again, the numbers are meaningless. I'm just saying them out loud. 5.8, 6, and 6.2. Let's go to 6.3 because I know that's the maximum on this pack. Perfect. Good. You can see as I review these, thank you, Magnus, that we just dial in and out, literally, our base layer. You can really see as it comes up here. So if I'm doing this and someone comes in, maybe they have deeper eye caves, you know, the more pronounced brow, I'm going to change the shape of the modifier because I can't come up as high. Maybe they need a little bit more help, a little bit more light in the eyes. You know, not everyone catches light in the eyes in exactly the same way. So you can literally just dial in this light source, this base layer, to bring it make it brighter. The difference and reason I'm not doing this with my wraparound one light, which is very beautiful, is we're in a very large studio. I actually don't necessarily have enough power in my light to even bring that up the way I want to. So when we combine these two together, it's a really forgiving setup, and it is absolutely reliable for if you cannot get your environmental shot and you want to have control of that directionality. Again, Magnus, I'm going to have you come in and just help me do a couple of modifications here. I want to see what happens as we do different directions. I think also I want to just have a quick look here on my screen to see which light would work most beautifully. And I'm looking at what gives us the drama of this outfit and what flatters Christina the most. And I think actually as we come to about there, and I would imagine that's also about 4.6 maybe, or 5.0, let's try that, on the backlight. So we're dropping that backlight in a little bit. Good. And then I like this shadow. I always get asked, oh, what about, I have a shadow being cast on the background back here in the picture. Is that a problem? I'm like, I think if you don't have shadows on the background, it doesn't feel connected to reality. I think people get a little bit wrapped up in not having shadows because if you're shooting on white, yes, you don't want those shadows, but shooting on white is a whole other thing. And I'll just give you a little throwaway tip. Shooting on white is complicated until you realize when you photograph on white, what you need to do is light your model and not let any of the light that's lighting the model hit the background, and then separately light the background, and then you combine those together. That's the way I think about shooting on white. That's all I'll go into about that on this class. Let's try moving her off the backdrop a little bit. Christina, maybe we go to this just in front of this line. Perfect. Not as fast, but come back a couple steps, a little bit more. Perfect. Magnus is going to move this light along with it. Let's do that. Perfect. And that's actually really nice. It changes the dynamic a little bit because what have we done? We've increased the distance of the light, this light that was lighting the backdrop, from the backdrop. So less light is hitting the backdrop, making it darker. But it's still even because I've got it lit by my base layer. We haven't changed the distance of the light from the model to the light, so that's staying the same, but what's on the background is changing. It's like magic. It's like so forgiving. Perfect. And so actually, I really like this. Let's take one step back. Yeah, perfect. Magnus is going to move it along. Good. Let's try it a little bit more wrapped in. He's going to bring it in a little bit more. There we go. Good. Let's try completely wrapped in. Yeah, pointing directly at our model. Now we can get away with this. It's a little brighter, and you see how much more light you get on the backdrop? Again, feathering is so magical because it allows you to control what light is hitting your background. Without that, you don't have this control of saying, oh, I'll just move the model closer and further away, because the ratio between what's hitting the model and what's hitting the background always stays the same. So back to the feathered. Maybe we can have it come in from above a little bit more. Yeah, he's going to angle it down a little bit and then bring it up. Really fashiony. Perfect. Yeah, a bit more height on that. And we might need to increase the power of that light also. Let's see, was that in place? Good. Christina, just bring your chin up slightly. We're going to cheat a little bit here. That's also kind of nice, but I lose the catch light in the eyes, which sometimes is also okay. But these kind of experimentations, if you're doing different things, this is forgiving. If you use the one light setup for this, anytime you move anything, everything changes. It's why this is such a reliable setup for me. So I think we'll go back to where it was feathered. I really like that. We did our little experiment. We found the right spot. Whether you light from the right or the left is up to you. It mostly is determined for me by what space do I have. Second consideration is the photogenic nature of people. Everyone has a side that they like, so I'd like to light that side if I'm shooting for them. most of the time, practicality wins on that consideration. Perfect. Good. Christina is just owning this whole setup. I love what we have here. I do have a little bit of a shadow on the top right corner there, and that's the shadow being cast by this light on the background. But I'd rather have this light than have to worry too much about retouching out a little bit of the backdrop there. So from here, you can bring in your V-flat for the bounce, or in this case, if you have a circular reflector or have someone holding it, V-flat is nice. I don't need to hold it. I'm going to ask Magnus, could you grab a small bounce board? I think we have one over there. Perfect. And you can add or take away. Perfect. Yeah, you can add some light on this side. Because we're feathered with our one light, we can bounce it back. I like this. It works well for like portrait, but it tends to make it a little bit flat. You don't necessarily need it because you already have your base layer filling in. So I'm going to have Magnus come in real close to her, bounce a lot of that light back. Yeah, perfect. And you see how it gets Christina eyes here? Yeah, perfect. And you see how it just, the face doesn't have as much directionality because we're filling in so much. It's still really pretty light, but what I'd like to do instead is maybe have Magnus walk it out a little bit. Good, lovely. And what we could also do is get creative with it by cutting some of the light on this side. Let's just play around with that a little bit. We're not going to do too much of that, but I'm wondering, like if we cut a little bit, would we get less on her dress? Her face is just popping out of there. Let's see. Up a bit. Yeah, perfect. Lovely. So you can really start to shape in here as well with just some negative fill.